Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, March 29th, 2020, and today we're going to be discussing the 2020 quote-unquote endorsement primary. Essentially, 538 has been tracking all of the presidential election endorsements for the Democratic primary from a number of notable senators, representatives, former presidents, a number of people that have endorsed and spoken up about the Democratic primary and who they are endorsing to be the Democratic nominee for president. So pretty much they've been tracking this since day one. A lot of people already came out and endorsed candidates that probably weren't even running at the time, and they've been tracking it ever since. Let's take a look at the overall numbers. Obviously, Joe Biden has a much larger lead in terms of endorsements, notable endorsements at least, over Bernie Sanders. 762 points allocated to Joe Biden versus 74 for Bernie Sanders. Essentially, these are allocated with 10 points for former president and vice president and current National Party leaders, 8 points for governors, 6 points for United States senators, 5 points for former presidential and vice presidential nominees, 2020 presidential nominees that have dropped out, former National Party leaders, 3 points for U.S. reps and mayors of large cities, 2 points for statewide officers, statewide legislative leaders, and other DNC members are 1 point. So if you actually take a look, not that many people got endorsements or a number of notable endorsements. The only people who are above, I would say, maybe 20 points were Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker, Michael Bloomberg, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Joe Biden. In fact, Elizabeth Warren and Senator Harris and Michael Bloomberg raked in more endorsements than Bernie Sanders on a nationwide level. So how influential are these actually? Well, governors definitely have a big say. If there's a Democratic governor and there's a primary in the state and they're relatively approved of, they will definitely be swaying the overall public in the favor of one candidate or another. How about United States senators? There's 2 per state, so they should have some power, especially in states that have large numbers of representatives, that individual representatives may or may not make a difference. Compared to states like Montana and North Dakota with 1 sole representative that possibly could have more of a say than a sole United States representative. But a lot of those states are Republican states, so generally they will not have a representative that holds an endorsement for the Democratic primary whatsoever. But where are Joe Biden's numbers coming from? Well, they show us a United States map allocated in terms of most possible points, meaning the most, number of Democratic officials from those states. So states such as North Dakota will be very small compared to states like my home state of Maryland has 79 points compared to Virginia, which has 67, even though Maryland has a smaller population, just has more Democratic Party officials. But if we take a look, let's take a look at where Biden's numbers are doing really well in. Pretty much everywhere. Other than this small section in the West, I guess, is Montana, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming. Just taking a look at the Northeast, definitely a good area. The South, definitely. And parts of the West, at least. I mean, he's doing well in California and Arizona. There's definitely a higher concentration of supporters for Joe Biden. But if you take a look at Bernie's map, it's pretty spread out. There aren't that many areas with highly concentrated endorsements. The only state that's actually highly concentrated is the state of Vermont, where he gets a 20 out of 32 total points in the state of Vermont. And yes, there is a flaw in some of these systems. Endorsements from AOC do not weigh as much as a governor, but also you have to take a look at the number of other representatives that have endorsed both candidates, and they really shouldn't be outweighing notable governors in each individual state. I mean, if you take Andrew Cuomo, people definitely know that over, let's say, Andrew Brown from Maryland. I believe he's the 4th representative. But just taking a look at Bernie Sanders' map, it doesn't exactly show that he should be performing well in any state. So the fact that he has, despite not being endorsed by a number of people that 538 would consider notable, definitely goes to show that he still has that strong coalition regardless of what the establishment says. But generally the establishment candidate, or as they would put it, is the candidate that wins. I'm not going to say that both of these candidates couldn't be labeled as an establishment candidate. I can guarantee it if Bernie Sanders was up on that stage and it wasn't Joe Biden and it was a relatively new Democrat such as Pete Buttigieg, he would be claiming that Bernie Sanders is the establishment. And considering that Bernie Sanders has been in Congress for decades now, I think that argument could stand and could actually be used against him. Maybe not a Democrat establishment type candidate, but definitely, I guess you could say, congressional one. at least. But Joe Biden is definitely that and more. So it looks like that whole establishment discussion definitely circles around Joe Biden as it did Hillary Clinton. But there's a reason why all of these candidates are former candidates are also endorsing Vice President Biden. A lot of them have noted the electability issue, which is the same argument that was made in 2016, not saying that I believe Bernie Sanders would have done better than Hillary Clinton because that was an election that never came to be. But it is a possibility, and a lot of people are citing Hillary Clinton's loss as a reason why Joe Biden cannot win. Nominating the same person twice does not mean that you are going to somehow get a second win, but there are definitely different circumstances. Joe Biden is not Hillary Clinton, though some people may argue that they have very similar ideals. They do both hold centrist policies, but Joe Biden definitely has a lot less baggage than Hillary Clinton. But there are some things in the news that I haven't seen much in the national news media that honestly should be discussed, but in actuality, I do not think it will be. But besides that, let's take a look at what some of these endorsements are. So we all know all the notable endorsements for Joe Biden from presidential candidates that have ran: Beto O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Michael Bloomberg, Kamala Harris. There's a lot of people, and it looks like there's a pretty notable recent endorsements. Joe Biden just got 2 endorsements from the Hawaii Senate and Hawaii House. I actually think that will help, mainly because Hawaii was supposed to come up, and I believe may be coming up on this sometime. It actually might be in June now. I honestly do not know if they've moved it from April to either May or June, but that definitely could help. Wisconsin is the closest election, April 7th, and Governor Tony Evers said that he would not move it. So that looks like it's going to come, and it's from the House and Senate minority leaders. Definitely going to help. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, I think that will actually help. She's also a former candidate as well. Tulsi Gabbard's endorsement was also interesting. Definitely could help in Hawaii. But just a number of not notable representatives, but a number of representatives, a lot of DNC members. But I'm actually interested as to who this list is insanely long. We're seeing a number of people who have endorsed. Andrew Cuomo actually endorsed Joe Biden right away. That is interesting because he's in the news media. I definitely think that he'll go ahead and say something else. But as for Bernie Sanders, well, he has gotten some endorsements from U.S. representatives. He got Marianne Williamson's endorsement. He hasn't had too many former 2020 Dems even defend him. Andrew Yang definitely has defended him, but Andrew Yang also endorsed Joe Biden. And honestly, if it was down to endorsements, Bernie Sanders would not be in the running whatsoever. Joe Biden is obviously a man who has built connections long and far, being the former vice president, being a senator for such a long period of time. It definitely makes sense that Joe Biden has what it takes to win over a lot of these top DNC names and a number of congressional members and former 2020 Dems. And I do think that these endorsements will make a difference in the presidential election as well. When we're talking about conservative Democrats that are in limbo areas that typically vote Republican but have the possibility of voting for Joe Biden this time around if he is the nominee, well, those endorsements definitely could go a long way. Whether it costs them their congressional seat or not is a whole other story, but generally, if they are able to convince some Republican voters to vote for Biden, their seats are probably in a good standing. Just taking a look at where, again, the rest of the remaining delegates are, I mean, no one's really caring about what happens over in Montana or in Idaho or Utah. I mean, yes, some of these already happened, and they don't have a pretty large portion of the delegate share whatsoever. The area that Joe Biden is getting a number of notable endorsements from are still left to vote and definitely have a huge say in who is the Democratic nominee. For example, we have Ohio, we have Pennsylvania, we have New York, we have Wisconsin, we have, I guess, if you just take a look, Georgia, a number of states that have not voted yet. If you take a look at the states that have voted, when you look at the high concentrations of where Joe Biden has endorsements, Florida, 48 out of 70. That's a majority, and Joe Biden got way more than a majority of the Democratic primary vote there. In Illinois, that should have been a Bernie Sanders target, somewhere that he could have won in to halt Joe Biden's progression through the race. Did not happen, and there's a number of reasons for it, but these endorsements definitely are one. I can guarantee it. South Carolina changed the momentum of the race. The reason why South Carolina went overwhelmingly to Joe Biden was because of an endorsement. That is what happened. It wasn't all of a sudden centrist Democrats banded together because there were still a number of other candidates that those centrist Democrats could have voted for. They voted for Vice President Biden because of an endorsement. Once South Carolina hit, a lot of people realized we're not making it past this. They dropped out, endorsed Biden right before Super Tuesday, and boom, the Democratic primary flipped. And when I say flipped, I mean it flipped drastically. The markets shifted insanely. The chances of each candidate shifted insanely. It was, honestly, in Democratic Party history, the biggest comeback for any presidential election candidate. Joe Biden was at the top of the, name branch for the longest period of time, and the endorsements are what changed the trajectory of the race. So you cannot tell me endorsements don't matter. They may not matter as much now, but they definitely are the things that start off a race with a strong candidate, and even if they do end up going under, new endorsements sweep people right back up. That Pete Buttigieg announcement, I believe, with Beto O'Rourke, I think they did it at the same time. Amy Klobuchar definitely helped. Minnesota would have not gone to Biden. I can almost guarantee that. Massachusetts would not have gone to Biden if Elizabeth Warren hadn't stayed in the race. Not saying that's her fault. Every candidate has a right to stay in the race however long they want to. But I honestly think that the endorsements are the real reason why Joe Biden is doing well. Now that I think about it, it's the only thing that kept his campaign alive back in South Carolina. He may not need them anymore, though. He doesn't need that Obama endorsement. A lot of people were saying that Obama needs to endorse Biden. Doesn't need to happen now. Biden will win on his own if things stay the same. Not saying Bernie Sanders doesn't have a chance, but mathematically speaking, it doesn't look too good. Joe Biden has the largest delegate lead over Bernie Sanders, larger than any lead Obama had over Hillary Clinton, and larger than a lot of the time period that Hillary Clinton had over Bernie Sanders in 2016. So that pretty much wraps up this video. You can go ahead and check this website out yourself. It's 538.com. If you just go to the 2020 election, it's called Who's Winning the 2020 Endorsement Primary, which will also probably be the name of this video. But I think that it could be pretty interesting for you guys to just check out yourselves, look at your own state representatives, state elected officials, just see who is endorsing which candidates have been endorsed previously. For example, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, a number of dropped out Democrats, just for your own knowledge. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.